The Bordeaux Wine Official Classification of 1855 resulted from the 1855 Exposition Universelle de Paris, when Emperor Napoleon III requested a classification system for France's best Bordeaux wines which were to be on display for visitors from around the world. Brokers from the wine industry ranked the wines according to a Cars-Centau's reputation and trading price, which at the time was directly related to quality. The wines were ranked in importance from first to fifth growths. All of the red wines that made it on the list came from the Médoc region except for one, Château Haut-Brion from Graves. The white wines, then of much less importance than red wine, were limited to the sweet varieties of Sauternes and Barsac and were ranked only from first great growth to second growth. Changes to the classification: within each category, the various Cars-Centaux are ranked in order of quality, and only twice since the 1855 classification has there been a change, first when in 1856 Cantimel was added as a fifth growth and, more significantly, in 1973, when Cars-Centaux Mouton Rothschild was elevated from a second growth to a first growth vineyard after decades of intense lobbying by the powerful Philippe de Rothschild. A third, but less known change, is the removal of Cars-Centaux du Bignon, a third growth from Margaux that was absorbed into the estate Cars-Centaux Male Scott Saint-Exupéry copyright OY. A superficial change is that since 1855, when only 5 of the estates were styled with the word Cars-Centaux in their name, most Bordeaux wine estates now use this nomenclature. Critique: as a classification of Cars-Centaux, the actual vineyards owned by some wineries have expanded, shrunk and been divided without any reclassification, and considerable plots of valued terroir have changed ownership. Many wine critics have argued that the 1855 classification became outdated and does not provide an accurate guide to the quality of the wines being made on each estate. Several proposals have been made for changes to the classification, and a bid for a revision was unsuccessfully attempted in 1960. Alexis Lichine, a member of the 1960 revision panel, launched a campaign to implement changes that lasted over 30 years, in the process publishing several editions of his own unofficial classification. Other critics have followed a similar suit, including Robert Parker, who published a top 100 Bordeaux estates in 1985, and L'Histoire de la Vigne and du Vin by Bernard and Henri Jalbert in 1989, as well as efforts made by Clive Coates and David Peppercorn. Ultimately nothing has come of them. The likely negative impact on prices for any downgraded Cars-Centaux and the 1855 establishment's political muscle are considered among the reasons. In March 2009, the British Wine Exchange Livex released a modern recalculation of the 1855 classification, with an aim to apply the original method to the contemporary economical context. Many of the leading estates from the Mar copyright DOC appellation that were not included in the 1855 classification are classified as cru bourgeois, a classification system that has been updated on a regular basis since 1932, banned in 2007, but reinstated in 2010. The Mar copyright DOC classification of 1855, in French Les Grands Crus Classe copyright SN 1855. The estates are listed with their commune, and their AOC in parenthesis, if different from the commune. The 19th-century names appear as listed by the brokers on April 18, 1855, followed by the modern names, as the use of second cru for red wines and deuxième cru for white wines. The red wines of the Gironde, first growths, Cars-Centaux Lafite, now Cars-Centaux Lafite Rothschild, Paulac, Cars-Centaux Latel, Paulac, Cars-Centaux Margaux, Haut-Brion, now Cars-Centaux Haut-Brion, Pessoc, Graves, Mouton, now Cars-Centaux Mouton Rothschild, Paulac, second growths, Rosanzar copyright Glac, now Cars-Centaux Rosanzar copyright Glac, Margaux, Rosangasses, now Cars-Centaux Rosangasses, Margaux, La copyright Aville, now, Cars-Centaux La copyright Aville Las Cases, Street Julien, Cars-Centaux La copyright Aville Poifera copyright, Street Julien, Cars-Centaux La copyright Aville Barton, Street Julien. Vivens d'Erfort, now Cars-Centaux d'Erfort Vivens, Margaux, Graude la Rose, now Cars-Centaux Graude la Rose, Street Julien, Lascums, now car Cento Lascums, Margaux, Brain, now car Cento Brain Contenac Margaux, Pike and Longueville, now, car Cento Pike and Longueville Baron, Porlac, car Cento Pike and Longueville Comtesse de Lalande, Porlac. Ducru Bocala, now car Cento Ducru Bocala, Street Julien, Cos d'Estournel, now car Cento Cos d'Estournel, Street Estafie, Montrose, now car Cento Montrose, Street Estafie, Third Growths, Cowan, now car Cento Cowan, Contenac Margaux, car Cento Dysan, Contenac Margaux, Lagrange, car Cento Lagrange, Street Julien, Langot, now car Cento Langot Barton, Street Julien, Giscouers, now car Cento Giscouers, Labad Margaux Street Ixchupa Copywriter Y, now car Cento Male Scott Saint Ixchupa Copywriter Y, Margaux, Boyd, now, car Cento Contenac Brown, Contenac Margaux, car Cento Boyd Contenac, Margaux. Palmer, now car Cento Palmer, Contenac Margaux, La Lagune, now car Cento La Lagune, Loudon, Dismirale, now car Cento Dismirale, Margaux, Dubignon, later car Cento Dubignon, Margaux, Callan, now car Cento Colonsar Copyright Gur, Street Estafie, Ferrierie, now car Cento Ferrierie, Margaux, Becker, now car Cento Marquis de Lesson Becker, Margaux, Fourth Growth Street Pierre, now car Cento Saint Pierre, Street Julien, Talbot, now car Cento Talbot, Street Julien, Duluc, now car Cento Brenoy Ducru, Street Julien, De Hart, now car Cento De Hart Millen, Porlac, Pouget La Salle and Pouget, both now car Cento Pouget, Contenac Margaux, Carnet, now car Cento La Tour Carnet, Street Laurent, Rocher, now car Cento Lafon Rocher, Street Estafie, car Cento de Baycheval, now car Cento Baycheval, Street Julien, La Priera Copyright, now car Cento Priera Copyright Lichine, Contenac Margaux, Marquis de Thermes, now car Cento Marquis de Terme, Margaux, Fifth Growths, Canet, now car Cento Pontet Canet, Porlac, Bataille, now, car Cento Bataille, Porlac, car Cento Hort Bataille, Porlac. Grand Fuy, now car Cento Grand Fuy Lacoste, Porlac, Artigues Nord, now car Cento Grand Fuy Ducas, Porlac, Lynch, now car Cento Lynch Bags, Porlac, Lynch Moussas, now car Cento Lynch Moussas, Porlac, Dozac, now car Cento Dozac, Labad, Darmelac, now car Cento Dermelac, Porlac, Litatra, now car Cento Dutatra, Ossac, Hort Bags, now car Cento Hort Bags Libre Copyright Ral, Porlac, Par Copyright Desclos, now car Cento Par Copyright Desclos, Porlac, Coutenceau, now car Cento Belgrave, Street Laurent, Camansac, now car Cento de Camansac, Street Laurent. Cos-la-Borie, now car Cento Cos-la-Borie, Street Estafie, Clerc Millen, now car Cento Clerc Millen, Porlac, Croisé Bags, now car Cento Croisé Bags, Porlac, Cantimal, now car Cento Cantimal, Macau. The white wines of the Gironde, Barsac estates may be labeled with the appellation Barsac or Sauternes. Superior First Growth, Im, now car Cento d'Im, Sauternes, First Growths, La Tour Blanche, now car Cento La Tour Blanche, Bombs, Piregi, now, car Cento La Forêt Piregi, Bombs, car Cento Clos Haute Piregi, Bombs. Vigneau, now car Cento de Reine Vigneau, Bombs, Suderat, now car Cento Suderat, Prignoc, Coutet, now car Cento Coutet, Barsac, Climans, now car Cento Climans, Barsac, Bale, now car Cento Gerald, Sauternes, Rousec, now car Cento Roisec, Fargus, Rabaud, now, car Cento Rabord Promise, Bombs, car Cento Siglas Rabord, Bombs. Second Growths, Marat, now car Cento de Mirat, Barsac, Dozy, now, car Cento Dozy Dorny, Barsac, car Cento Dozy du Broca, Barsac, Château Haut-Brion copyright Drines, Barsac. Peixoto, now part of Château Haut-Brion Promise, Euro unregistered trademark Arch, now Château d'Arch, Sauternes, Filehot, now Château Filehot, Sauternes, Brustet now copyright Rack, now, Château Brustet, Barsac, Château Nerac, Barsac. Cala, now Château Cala, Barsac, Soule, now Château Soule, Barsac, Moore, now Château de Moore, Prignoc, Roma, now, Château Roma, Fargus, Château Roma du Hayot, Fargus. Lemouv, now, Château Lemouv, Sauternes, Château Lemouv Guinard, Sauternes. See also, Classification of Graves Wine, Classification of Saint-Emilion Wine, Regional Wine Classification, History of Bordeaux Wine, Bordeaux Wine Regions, Judgment of Paris, Notes and References. General. Footnotes. External links, Great Growths of 1855 official site.